Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee members, once again, I recognize that there may be some very pressing questions here. We're a little bit over time, but if someone has the question that needs to be answered and we have our experts, I want to allow that. I'm not seeing any. Gentlemen, I do have, I have one of those questions. Are any of you, possibly all of you, familiar with the terminal ballistics of a lead bullet, a jacketed lead bullet? Any of you familiar with that? Because I have a question for anyone who is.
I would probably defer. I'm going to be relatively confident, but I'd be concerned about the question.
All right. Let me pose the question and see if any of you feel competent to be able to answer it. It has the appearance, at least to me, that there is an assumption that jacketed lead bullets fragment upon impact with an animal. Now, I am a hunter myself. I personally do not choose to hunt with fragmentary bullets. They are not terribly effective. At least that's been my experience. And that I am, and none of the hunters that I'm aware of choose that type of ammunition either. That hunters typically look for a bullet that, upon impact, mushrooms and holes together for penetration purposes. Is the assumption that lead bullets fragment? Is there an assumption here that the bullet is just lead, and we are not considering the jacketing effect of a bullet? Would you comment on this, please?
Chair Witt, Vice Chair Esquivel, and members of the committee, I think I can address that. 25 years, I checked literally thousands of Oregon deer and elk. I was a former Fish and Wildlife officer. I examined many necropsies, field necropsies, as those old game guys talked about, trying to find the bullet, trying to find fragments, because oftentimes they were very, very important evidence in prosecution, especially if we had a crime, poaching of whatever it may be. I think Michigan or Minnesota just completed a research study where they used 250 carcasses, sheep or pig, can't remember which exactly, where they shot bullets into these carcasses. We did hear that bullets just fragment, and that they could be, because of that fragmentation, could be very susceptible to all type of scavengers or anything, coyotes or whatever else might want to eat on them. That's not really true. In some cases, it's very true. But to generalize, and Chair Witt, you're absolutely correct. The last thing we want to do on a piece of hunting ammunition is to have it fragment, not leave it on the channel that actually does a massive amount of damage. That's the kill power. That's the downrange impact. I've actually used Barnes all copper. They're a good bullet. But for earlier testimony, you indicated this alternative ammunition is widespread and available. Untrue. Twice the cost. Availability is extremely limited. Mail order in many cases impossible. So I think what we have to make sure is that the information is clear, precise, and accurate, and ballistics are going to be a big portion of that discussion.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I have the good fortune to have some associates and friends who are very well versed in this, and I did go to them and ask them questions like that. And one of the things they pointed out is, and I have the notes they gave me, the objective is to design a bullet that is dense enough to penetrate, strong enough to hold together to break bones, but malleable enough to expand to create a large wound channel while dumping all of the bullet's energy inside the animal, which would not be how you would describe a fragmentary bullet.
Vice Chair Esquivel, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, actually, I could chime in a little bit here. I took an elk one time and hit him 3 times in his tenderloins, and all 3 bullets stayed inside. And I weighed those bullets, and there wasn't a grain difference in all 3 weights from what I started with and what I finished with. So, no offense, but I just don't subscribe to what some people are saying in this hearing.
I have a final question. I don't know if any of the other committee members, but my last question, hopefully we can move on. Again, my personal experience, I'm not suggestive that this is necessarily true across the board, but it's counterintuitive to think that jacketed bullets are stopped by, excuse the graphic nature, but intestines and guts, if you will. That it's usually hard bone matter and other parts of the animal. Oftentimes, the opposite side cape or skin is what actually ends up stopping that projectile. Do we have reason to believe that it's common for guts to stop projectiles?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. As a matter of fact, as you're probably aware, there are rounds of ammunition that are specifically designed to fragment. They're used in defense, and they're completely different from what would be used to hunt. And if bullets fragmented by their nature, there'd be no reason to specially design a bullet that did that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative
In
Krieger.
Oregon, we're taught to properly try to take an animal, which means you don't shoot it in the guts. Maybe in California they do.
Representative Whitsitt.
I just have a comment. It's not quite related to this, but it is in a way. We have thousands of raptors dying yearly by flying into wind-powered generating facilities across the West, and yet our government gives these industries a pass even on endangered species. So I have a really hard time saying, you know, on one hand, we forgive it, and on the other hand, we don't. So.
Absolutely right.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Appreciate